JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley. I'm the host of Talking Books show on Web Talk Radio. And today I have a phenomenal author for you, all from the United States of America, New Jersey, I believe, that area. His name is Fish Nealman. And he's joining me to talk about his book, The Flat Tire. A book that illuminates the universal threads of humanity, binding us all. The book is split into 3 parts. It's very cleverly thought out and extremely well written, everybody. So, what is in this book? Well, I know what's in the book because I read it when I flew out to Spain, and I wrote the interview, everybody, when I flew back from Spain. What is in this book? Well, I'm going to get Fish Nealman to tell you what's in this book. But first of all, I need to bring him on the show to introduce him to you. So, Fish Nealman from New Jersey area in the United States of America, come and join me on the show.
Hi, John. It's wonderful to be with you. And I'm so glad to hear that you brought my book with you on your trip to Spain. And I hope you had a wonderful time out getting tanned and enjoying the food.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And even when I was flying back, writing up the interview, everybody. There you go. That is called multitasking. Now, Fish, before we open the book, would you care to tell the audience a little bit about yourself? You know, who are you? And what's the story behind this story? And why did you write it?
I'm an author of literary fiction. I tend to write novels, stories that have deep characters that I like to explore. They often end up taking some religious themes to that because I like to explore those things and use that as ways to develop how people think and feel about the environments that they live in. Prior to The Flat Tire, I had written a trilogy that went under the general heading title of Esteban. The 3 books of Esteban were Love's Ordeal, Love's Irony, and Love's Triumph. And there is a little bit of synergy between the Esteban trilogy and my new book, The Flat Tire. So
now I have to correct him, everybody, because he says he's an author. Yes, he's an author, but he's an award-winning author, everybody. What award have you got, Fish?
I've been fortunate enough that all of my books have won awards. The latest one for The Flat Tire was a Bookfest award that won first place. So I was very happy and privileged to receive that.
You see, he's not just an author, everybody. He's an award-winning author. And these awards are not given out lightly, I can tell you that. Now, Fish, when I looked at your book, you know, the story is absolutely epic, it's powerful, it's very well written, and the creativity and how you weave these characters together is brilliantly done. And you've done this over 17 chapters. And you have carefully split the book into 3 parts. The first part, which has 4 chapters, really introduces the 4 main characters. And you've done that very cleverly because you need to tell the people who these characters are because they are very, very dominant and they come from totally different backgrounds, everybody. And then we go to the second part of the book, which consists of 6 chapters. And that we start here, everybody, to see Fish knitting the characters together. They are coming together, they are merging together, they're starting to work together. And then in part 3, we've got 7 chapters. And that focus on the purpose, the aim of what the main protagonists and their individual expertise are bringing to this epic story of humanity, equality. But it's also about a redeclaration of the United States. It's them drafting a redeclaration for equality and humanity. This is what this book is about. And all of these characters and all of these storylines, they can all suffer from a flat tire. And that is the link. So, Fish. Now, we're not going to go into all of the 17 chapters, everybody. That's not the purpose. If you want to know more about Fish Nealman and the book, then go to his webpage, www.tales.fish. Or you can go to the written introduction that accompanies this podcast, and there you'll find out more about him. You'll find the link to his webpage. You'll find the link to the Amazon site for his book, and you'll find a lot more there because it'll take you to his social media sites as well. So you will find out all about Fish Nealman there. This purpose is just to give you a flavour and insight to whet your appetite as to what you can expect from this book. So I want to go to the first chapter, which introduces us to Cardinal Otto LaMacchia. And what I can ascertain, Fish, he's a progressive liberal within the church, which at times exposes him to criticism from both within and outside the church itself, particularly from the clergy and those who have a more conservative background to them. But he's very clever. He's very, very good, everybody, of knitting all the communities, the sides within the church together. He can knit the liberal-minded ones, the conservative ones together. He's very, very good at that. And that's why his ability to do that, he was promoted, so to speak, from archbishop, to cardinal. The reason why he was given the cardinal role was to ensure that he has the power to do the job that is needed to be done. So I'm very, very curious here, Fish, as to why you chose this opening character here, why you gave him the title of cardinal, why you've given him all the characteristics that you've given him. Tell me about Cardinal Otto LaMacchia.
Otto was an interesting aspect. One of the things about the flat tire is that it's also a sidequel to the Esteban trilogy. And what I mean by a sidequel is it's not a prequel, it's not a sequel, but it's a story that goes alongside Esteban. And the character of Otto is a character that is also shared with the Esteban story. And in the Esteban story, Otto at one point seeks to become the new pope. The College of Cardinals convenes after the Pope passes away in the Esteban trilogy. And Otto is one of the people that is trying to become Pope. So he's illuminating that power. And it's the power that you had just mentioned, that he's very good at networking. He plays people. He tries to be somebody that unites. But there's a double-edged sword with somebody that will unite for purely altruistic reasons, and somebody that tries to unite because it can further their career, if you will. So within Otto's character, the fact he's come up from the priesthood to become a bishop, and then later on a cardinal, and then with aspirations to become a pope, he's looking to grow. He has a motivation, a goal, this desire to be more per se than what he is. That is an element of power. There are elements of ego within that. It's not to say, as he is a religious character, that he is not good of heart, pure of heart, but there are human traits that come to play here. And this one of ascending in the career to have an impact relies on this notion that while he may not bring it to the forefront, is definitely part of his innate being, in that he has a sense of growing his power. It's not that it's not to do good or to embrace or to bring people together, but there is this essence of an ego within that. So he's laden with that. And you were very right in recognizing that there is a degree of power within that. As a character that comes over from the Esteban series, I did that with the intent that I'll often read a book, and certainly you'll see it in a movie. There can be a complete side character. You have no idea about that side character because it's a small cameo type of appearance. What's going on in their life, their world? How did they get brought up in the world? What were their influences? What are their biases? What are they doing post that book or post that movie? So I wanted to kind of have this innocuous character that was not in the forefront in Esteban to be the Lynch in this, that allowed me to further develop the character, to give him a deeper personality, and for me to also find out some of his motivations and what drove him. It was the very first chapter that I wrote in the book. And it was after writing that first chapter that I then developed the rest of the story arc. So he was written before I had the end in mind for the story or where it was going to go. And so I found it a very interesting process to write about him, to understand a little bit more. And then it was like, through that, the book almost started, being able to say, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to develop these thoughts. Within developing this aspect of the character Otto and having him embark on a journey to Washington, D.C., when I was writing that, I didn't inherently know why. But then it started occurring to my mind that this was written before the last US elections, that if somebody like Donald Trump were to regain a presidency with the type of reforms or makeovers that potentially he would have the capacity to entertain, revamping or reinstantiating what it means to have the United States of America was plausible. So it was taking the initial deep dive into Otto with some of the auspices about what was going on in current affairs in the world, and then developing the story from that, which then created the need in going into chapter 2, 3, 4 with the other protagonists that you had mentioned, so that I had a richer set of people that would end up in Washington, D.C. for a purpose. You had mentioned in the beginning about the Redeclaration of America, and the notion of that is seeded that we live in a times where it's potentially not impossible for somebody to try to do that. Whether it will or not, I don't know. But it was really trying to not as much foreshadow, but anticipate that we are very much in a changing world, and to write a story and narrative built around that. As you mentioned within the book's title, The Flat Tire, that originates in an aspect that I leveraged one of the occurrences to Otto in that first chapter, which he experienced a number of mechanical and other failures with his vehicle on the way to Washington, D.C., namely the flat tire was one of them. That making that a common aspect with some of the other characters in the book. or most of the other characters, what it ended up with in the book, is that no matter what our background, where we come from, no matter our station in life, no matter what we've been able to attain, no matter what we have not been able to attain, no matter what country we're in, no matter what religion we're part of, there are simple things as human beings that we can end up sharing, even if we don't know each other. And it reminds me very much of William Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, where the character Shylock is at one point says, "If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh?" And it is this nature that people are people, and that a lot of the things that divide us around the world are really self-inflicted by people, us. It's not the divides are natural or from nature or directly from biology. It's whether from an ethos, a religion, a certain ethic. In India, let's say a caste system, or the UK with a former class system type of thing. A lot of these things are created by man, imposed on man. And I really wanted to pull back a little bit on that and really try to find the humanity in my characters, but also the humanity in my story, which was to try to have people be able to come together despite their differences, despite their different upbringings, despite their different religions, that you can respect somebody else for believing something different, but at the core nature of it, essentially the internal biology and everything, we're very much in common and very much of one. And it doesn't mean across the world that one person won't have more than somebody else. With 8 billion plus people on the planet, there are going to be differences in what people have or in what things. So the book isn't about saying everybody has to be homogenized, but there is an aspect that across all of those differences, it's not a rationale to develop hatred.
I totally agree. I mean, for me, the book is a real chessboard of characters, and they're all on the chessboard. And yes, you've got the 4 big characters there, but there are the minor characters. And even when you look at, Cardinal Otto, yes, he can, he's in a posh hotel, yes, but yet he can relate. He can relate to the waiter on the breakfast table and talk to them on their level. That's his ability. And there is a character coming down the book, everybody, who, she's not one of the big 4, but she plays a key part, but we'll talk about her later. But this is a real chessboard, and there are lots of moves played.
So even like in just one of the things that you mentioned with Otto, when he's got to DC and he wakes up the next morning and he's going up to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, when the maitre d' asks him for his room, Otto notices the name tag he's wearing on his lapel because it's his name tag. It has his name. Otto is sympathetic and empathetic enough to then, recognize this is a person, a human being. They have a name. You're aware of that name. You can immediately start, without knowing them, develop a stronger interpersonal relationship with them by acknowledging their name and referring to them by their name. So your point on that is very well taken and astute. And it's one of the things about Otto. He's very much tuned in to human behaviors and looking to be nice. That's
part of his natural gift. So I think we've covered Otto off quite a bit here, everybody, because there are another 3 characters that are so key here. And I want to go to the next character. And Fish, the next character in chapter 2 is Ezekiel. You refer to him throughout the book as Eli, so alias Eli. He is a Jewish rabbi. And for him, this character, it's about making sure Judaism was accessible and relevant. Now, the wonderful thing, everybody, about this character Ezekiel is that where he starts in life, what he starts to do, the fall he has, and the result of that fall is phenomenal. For me, Ezekiel is my favourite character of the big four. I do like this character because he has this stunning ability when he's sitting with, there are rules and regulations within the Jewish community about how to preach. Nowadays he's a rabbi, what to preach, when to preach. But he has this ability, the conversation in this chapter is around Eli talking to a older teenager who's got doubts. Now, anybody else could just throw the teenager away, left him aside, oh, I can't be bothered with you. But no, Eli takes the time to go through the shaman prayer that is said by the Jewish community, the Jewish religion, morning and evening. And he takes it line by line with this young person. And they start to examine it and what the prayer actually means. So again, we have got another phenomenal, strong-minded character here, which Fish has developed. So Fish, I want you to tell the audience the story of Ezekiel, what he's about and why he's there and his role in this big book of yours.
So Eli, Ezekiel, like all of the four protagonists, one of the reasons they are all on their way to DC is that within their respective communities, that they are all recognized as being some type of influencer. And so Eli is an influencer in the rabbi of the synagogue that he's at. It's very small and he's not an influencer about where his day-to-day work is, but he's taken to social media. That I have a Twitter-like concept called Bite Size, BYTE, so more computer-ish on the byte spelling. Bite Size, that people post these short videos that become known as digestibles, hence the play on the word bite as well. And from his posting of these social media videos, he's able to reach a large number of people, and he's an influencer in that way. His character, as you mentioned, being flawed, is actually based on a real person that I know. And the person had started out their life working on Wall Street, getting involved in insider trading, spending time in jail, and then during that time in jail, finding an alternative light and then pursuing that. So the character of Ezekiel starts out as somebody working on Wall Street, but like with many organizations, whether it's finance or not, a lot of companies set goals for everybody. They have, we want you by the year end to accomplish this number of whatever it is you're doing that's relevant for your job, or generating this much revenue, or generating whatever it is as a number. And Ezekiel, within his work on Wall Street, was then being driven by that number. The company wanted him to be able to meet or exceed a certain financial number. That put him under a lot of pressure to do that year after year after year. Within that pressure, it then, in a human flaw, is to then try to develop shortcuts or assurances about how to attain or achieve that. For Ezekiel, it meant cheating and starting to go into developing his relationships to then invest on insider knowledge, insider trading. Ultimately, that became his downfall, because even though he tried to hide his trading patterns, software these days is sophisticated enough that certain things can be found. he was found, he was prosecuted, he ended up to over 30 years sentence in prison. With good behavior, he got out early, but he spent his time in prison predominantly focused on finding a way to change his life once he came out. So coming out into post-prison, he had nothing. He lost everything because he had got sent to prison. He was starting again. He was fortunate to find a small parish, a synagogue that he could preach at, and he enjoyed that work. He communicated, and then he found a way to get a bigger audience through developing videos that he could post onto social media. And so he enjoyed being able to connect with people. He enjoyed being able to demonstrate how messages in Bibles or old religious books could be translated to become relevant in today's world. And your reference to the Shema prayer was one that within Hebrew, the word Shema is to hear. It's the first word of the Shema prayer that starts Shema Yisrael, or translated becomes Hear, O Israel. One of the things then from my standpoint that was of interest, that while the word Shema means hear, then it's followed by Yisrael. The word O directly isn't in the translation, but it certainly makes sense that if you have a name like John O'Malley or John O. Fitzgerald or something.
O'Brien, yes.
Right. The O takes on a certain something. In other languages and other cultures, Muslims will use the word bin. In Hebrew, you got the word ben. In Scotland, you have the word mac.
Yeah.
That essentially then all becomes son of. And so within the Shema Yisrael, the hero Israel, I take the O to be a descendant of. So when you have a meaning for the word Shema, meaning hear, which also means to listen, it then becomes hear or listen, a descendant, and then the word Yisrael or Israel. One of the things that is lost when you have the English spelling of Israel is it just looks like Israel. But in Hebrew, when you look at the letters that make up Yisrael, it then becomes an acronym, and it becomes an acronym of the matriarchs and patriarchs of Judaism. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, Rachel. And so within that, the Shema then becomes here a descendant of the matriarchs and patriarchs. So in a prayer, I write in the story, in the narrative, about how Eli leverages when he talks to this young boy, is that here's a prayer that God is directly talking to you. But while this prayer was written thousands of years ago, because the prayer starts out then referencing literally your great-great-great-grandparents, it's trying to personalize it, and then it becomes personalized for anybody that wants to read it. And certainly from a lot of the major religions in this world, with Christianity and Muslim being rooted back to Abraham, it's a prayer that is basically talking to a very large portion of this world in what becomes then a very personal type of way. So it's in the story, it's how Eli, in trying to establish this relationship with this boy to help him understand, talks about religion as a personal thing and not something for the masses.
You know, when I look at the character, you know, he came from a privileged background. He had a glittering, career in wealth and prestige. You know, he had posh house, posh apartments. And then, of course, the insider trading, he got a bit too greedy and he got found out. And so he took that time, everybody, just to reflect. And when you look at the book, and my understanding is that when he came out of jail, his life wasn't rich as in monetary terms, but it was richer for a more meaningful life. And that's what he's trying to do. That is the role and the key part of Ezekiel, alias ally. So we've got two very, very strong characters here, Cardinal Otto and Rabbi Eli. So what else can Fish add to the pot here? Well, let's throw in somebody who's bordering on agnostic. This is the third character, and this is Dr. Linda Herzog. She's a renowned philosopher and gender theorist, and her groundbreaking research on gender performity, had a profound impact on feministic theory and queer theory. Her childhood was very influenced by her parents, who were judges, who had strong political views, and so did her family in general. Her Jewishness was less about its religious affiliation and more about how one could successfully carry a stigma in the world. She's very controversial. She's very outspoken. She's got her own views. She, as I said, I see her as more as agnostic as opposed to theism or atheism. So, yeah, we've got the Catholic cardinal, now we've got a rabbi, and now you're throwing in Dr. Linda Herzog, an agnostic, a philosopher, a professor from a Jewish Italian background. Boy, you do love to muddy the waters, don't you, here?
And why not?
And why not?
Linda is also another character that actually amalgamates a few people I know, but the one aspect of Linda that was very important for me to develop was for her to be strong, independent, wouldn't take no nonsense from anybody, could stand up, defend herself. That she wasn't one to simply roll over and take whatever was given to her. That with her gender, that in some of the societal views on that was not that she was then weak in any way. So I just wanted to develop her attitudes, her philosophies on life, such that she felt certainly capable of going head to head with anybody on this planet. And it was that aspect that I really wanted to pull out in her character.
I could see, she certainly will stand her ground with the other three. She doesn't get pushed around by them. And I see her a bit like the queen on the chessboard. She can move in all directions. She's a dominant character. She has her viewpoints. But again, she's got that innate ability to listen and to take on board. And we're starting to see here, everybody, how these characters are blending. These are three characters who come from academic backgrounds, mainly professionals, strong family backgrounds. And so you start to get a pattern here. But do you? Because the fourth character is Matthew.
Martin.
I do apologize, yeah. He is an Iman. He's totally, totally different to the other three characters. So here we have Iman Martin. So we're entering the Muslim world. Now, Martin's background, as I said, is so very different to the other three. He doesn't come from a privileged background, everybody. He doesn't come from an academic background. His father died when he was very, very young. He's very astute. He's streetwise. He's book smart. And his childhood was far from idyllic. And his mother, who she did her level best to bring him up, suffered from mental anxiety issues. And he came through the foster care system with all its faults and with all its assets and all its trappings. So he's very, very different. So Fish, why have you put Martin into the fold here as an Iman? Where did he become interested in Islam?
It was during his troubled upbringing, that with people he was engaging with, he was working as a busboy in a restaurant, and in talking to some of the other workers at the restaurant, he became aware of the Nation of Islam. Some of the initial traits of Martin that I ended up steering a little bit away from was I had in my mind some characteristics of Martin X, so a dominant person in the 60s in the US. So some of Martin X seeded some things with Martin. And so he found out about that and developed his interest and took that further and was able to go back to school and complete his education. I did give him one of the things. It was intentional that all four of these characters, therefore, in the beginning of the story, have all gone to college, to university, and received an education. I'm not saying that one can't be successful or have an impact in the world without, but I certainly wanted to try to have that as an encouragement that it's always a good thing if you have an opportunity to become educated. And so it was intentional that everybody was given that opportunity. So in Martin's early years, as you mentioned, he was in and out of the foster community. When he would get foster parents, things would happen with that foster family that would cause him to have to go back into the system, that he couldn't sustain anything on a consistent way. It was very disruptive to his life, to the extent that he ended up completely dropping out of high school and abandoning his education, that it wasn't worth it. But I did then, through the story, be able to tie that back, that he was then given a second chance at continuing that education. And through that, it fostered opportunities for him to become an Iman and develop his life through that path. But again, the Martin character, so with Otto being Catholic, with Eli being Jewish, with Linda being agnostic, and now Martin being a Muslim, it was to have essentially four people that ostensibly have nothing in common. Flat tires potentially then become loosely something in common, and you don't even have to know each other to kind of experience that. And the characters experience the flat tires in different ways, direct or indirect. But it was really to set up this dichotomy of complete diversity that could be used as a basis to instantiate division, but I wanted it to be instantiate as a reason that people can come together.
I understand where you're coming from, because yes, when you read the first part of the book, everybody, yes, they are from different backgrounds and there's nothing in common, but they do have something in common. And this is where the book progresses. They have an ability to unite and work together. That's the common thread. And I want to go to this now. So I want to go to part 2 of the book, Fish, which takes in the chapters 5 to 10 and focuses on how the four main characters interact with each other from their initial meeting to how they interact with each other, how they conduct themselves with each other. Now, I don't want to venture into all the aspects of the goings on here. However, I do want to concentrate on 2 areas of this section. And the first chapter, Fish, I want to go to is Otto, Eli, and Linda, because this is where you've got the 3 characters blending together, working together. For me, this shows the reader how the characters interact and how they support the general theme of the book, which is, of course, that they are all human, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, environment, background, mental or physical abilities. We are all just people. For me, what caught my eye was 2 things here: how easily Linda, Otto, and Eli talk about their past, and 2, Eli's story in particular, would you care to to embellish, take this little lead in here a little bit further so as that the audience can start to see what's unfolding in front of their very eyes here? I know Martin isn't in this bit here. He is still significant, everybody, but the three of them here. Where are you taking us? It's a beautiful story.
It's really just a coming together by people that have never met. Ultimately, they don't really understand at this point in the story why they are meeting. They are forced together to share a table at breakfast in this hotel. They're the only people sitting in the restaurant at this particular point in time. It's a very fancy hotel. One of the things I had each of my characters do when they ordered breakfast, despite the menu being extremely exquisite and full of wonderful culinary delights, Otto orders a soft-boiled egg with some toast that's cut into strips, because my mother would call that like soldiers, and
soldiers, yeah,
dunk that in. So he's just eating something that Eli had ordered, just toast. The restaurant, the waitress asked him about, didn't he want some protein with that? And he just said butter. And she challenged him on that. And he said, well, I'll try to do better at lunch. And Linda is just ordering coffee and a croissant. So they basically could have any delight for breakfast at all. And it's very mundane breakfast food that independently that they've all settled on as a common aspect, that they're not just recognizing that they're each of them in their own way in a privileged aspect of society. They don't like to maximize it at every single thing, and therefore let me take the most exotic or the most expensive thing on the menu. I can be humble, ordinary. So that's revealed in just by what they order.
Yes, because you've got, they're very humble, and they're in this very, very posh restaurant. It's within the hotel, everybody. And the menu is just, it could be absolutely outstanding. And I think most of us would probably go for the sheer experience, of whatever's the best on the table, whatever's being presented. But they all opt for something pretty plain and simple, and that's the whole point. They could have gone for grandeur. They are in a grand surrounding, but they've opted for simplicity. It's very cleverly done. Just a breakfast table.
And when they start to talk, in almost as an icebreaker, Linda starts to go into some of the troubles that she had on her way to DC. She had chosen to hitchhike away from Bozeman, Montana, all the way to DC, part of that being ecologically minded, that she wanted to keep her carbon footprint low. And so she hitchhiked away across. And within that, she experienced in one of the cars she ultimately got a lift in, that there was a flat tire. The man, didn't quite know what to do. She stepped in, get out of my way, I'll fix the flat tire. So as a groundbreaker, she started to talk about her adventure in getting to DC and explain what she had to do and fix a flat tire. And so she, at this point, is completely unknowing that Otto himself experienced a flat tire in his car. Eli got to witness on his drive down, seeing a whole bunch of flat tires, but also experiencing in some anti-Semitic behavior, somebody slashing his car tire at the hotel. So she thinks she's talking about something unique and novel, but she's just launching into this to try to break the ice, as I said. But ultimately, it turns out to be something that establishes some affinity between the characters, that they all have experiences that they can share and understand and have in common, even though it's their first time of meeting.
Because they need everybody to get to know each other, to understand each other, to work their way. How are they going to do this redeclaration about humanity and the way forward for the US? redrafting, a redeclaration. So they needed to understand each other, and this is what the part 2 is about. Yes, there are other characters here who Fish has got in there, but I wanted just to focus on 2 of the areas. As I said, this is a real chessboard of characters and all playing out their own individual parts, but with 4 big characters. Yes, you have big characters, but one of the characters, and it's the second chapter I want to go, Fish, in this part of the book, and that is Camilla. And what really stands out for me here is that you should never judge a book by its cover. Now, she's a waitress, but she has a significant role here. So, Fish, would you care to enlighten us, throw some light on this young waitress, Camilla, her story, and how is she adding to the overriding plot, the overriding storyline within this magnificent book of yours?
She is, as you say precisely, that you can't judge a book by its cover. And this is, so true of people, that the way Camilla is described, she's very young, she's very slim, gaunt looking. She has these peculiar eyes that people read certain things in them. She spent her life, her parents were nurses that would travel overseas to poor countries to provide aid. Camilla, in her youth, saw a lot of atrocities, witnessed a lot of bloodshed through terroristic type of actions and so on. So she got to see a lot of things that people should not see. But in looking at somebody as a waitress, in somebody who's young, drawing certain conclusions, but she's taking an off year. She's about to start her PhD, and she was just taking a year break between completing her master's and before she starts her PhD program. She's also somebody that experienced a flat tire on the way to work as well.
Hence the title of the book, everybody, The Flat Tire.
But it was also something in misreading her as a character and just looking at her as a waitress. When something later on transpires in the hotel, it's Camilla that has the medical knowledge based on what she's experienced and because of her schooling and her parents' background, that she has the medical knowledge to know how to address. And so she surprises the other characters that she knows more, she has more skill. She's not just a waitress. She's just taking a breather in her life before getting back to the books and not be consumed by that. And it really is about how easy it is for us to misread, misunderstand, have false expectations about somebody if we don't have an opportunity to say hello, to find out about them.
Yes, and we're all guilty of it, aren't we? We all do it. We say we don't, but we do. We all judge.
Yes, there's an interesting part that Eli says earlier in the book, potentially about this, that Eli is talking to Otto, and he said that he had a student and asked them what the difference was between arrogance and apathy. And the response from the student was, "I don't know and I don't care." And it's like with the association to the Camilla character, we shouldn't have this arrogance or apathy towards somebody, that we should care to know who they are, and we should care to know what experiences they have and what values that they bring and how they think about things. And it's this juxtaposition to one of the passages earlier in the book.
It is, because sometimes they're thinking, oh, well, was she trailer trash? Just out there just to get a bit of pin money. And that could have been very easily taken as who Camilla was, but she's not. And it's emphasizing here, everybody, that yes, somebody who's working in a restaurant or a cafe, they might be there for a reason, as a bit of a crossroads in their own life. Something's happened and they're moving on, but they're using this period, this downtime period, to reflect and redirect and pick another life. And this is what Camilla is doing. And that is why she's there. She's very key to this chessboard of characters and stories. Now, I want to go to part 3. As I said, we have not dipped into all the chapters. That's not the reason for this interview. You want to know more about them, go and get the book. So Fish, this book of yours is so well written, and how you weave all the characters, the characteristics and the backgrounds is just exceptional. So let's take a trip to the 3rd part of the book, which is chapters 11 to 17, which you say ultimately reinforces the ideology that we are not really different from one another. And out of the 7 chapters here, 2 stood out for me, and they were Lilith and equality. So let's go to Lilith first. And here you talk about Lilith. We've got autism, the strength of the Apache Indian Geronimo. You're touching on Adam and Eve, some theory that Lilith in Jewish mysticism was quite a significant personage. And of course, we have the motel scene. It's very, very powerful chapter, and it's there for a reason. Would you care to tell us what the reader can expect from this chapter, from this part of the book? Where are you taking them?
Lilith as a character, there were a major incident that occurred several chapters before the Lilith chapter. And potentially with what happened, there is a complete mystery about who a certain individual was that caused a commotion. And the introduction of Lilith after the event was to allow the reader to understand a little bit more, not just about what transpired, but contextually what might have caused what transpired. And it's again rooted in this aspect of people being people, and that Lilith within her life has a scene of physical abuse that is going on, and it somewhat breaks her, and it is her response in the story that it is a dramatic part, a corollary into what ultimately happens, rooted in her name of Lilith, is that in mysticism, mythology, from a Judaistic standpoint, that before Eve and Adam, so before Adam and Eve, before Eve specifically, Adam had a previous wife, and her previous wife was Lilith. In the TV comedy show Cheers from the 80s, it would have been why Kramer's wife was called Lilith, because she was a little bit of a nasty person. But within the mysticism part, Lilith wanted to be an equal to Adam as dominant. And there were things, and that didn't go well, and she was cast out. This is also juxtaposed to when we were talking about Linda, Eli, and Otto when they met. Linda wasn't adverse to also trying to push some buttons that she mentioned about Adam and Eve in their initial conversation, and postulated that females are better than males because, according to the Old Testament, that Adam was formed from the dust of the four corners of the world, but Eve was made from Adam's rib, and that something that is made versus something that is formed is going to have a higher precision in what is the result. And so she was trying to ride or jibe Otto and Eli with postulating that realistically, if you took the words of the Old Testament, that females are better than males. So then that also created this association with Lilith to kind of complete that Adam and Eve story and get into everything about then the power, natural power of women. As you mentioned, Lilith, the character, does suffer from autism. And she's brought up and given opportunities by where she can participate within society and be useful member of society within her limitations. But then ultimately, she is broken by the act.
I mean, just because somebody has got autism, I mean, the autistic spectrum is enormous. And what one person who is on the autistic, scale, and another person, well, there's some people you wouldn't even realize that they were autistic. Haven't got those characteristics, that strong characteristics that determine, well, that person is autistic. You just don't realize it. It's so big, that spectrum. And again, it's coming down to, we really shouldn't judge people. And this is what Lilith is about. Yes, she's autistic, but she's got her own skills. She's got her own way of dealing with things and adapting to life. And this is why she's here. She's very powerful. And of course, Dr. Herzog, she's a bit of a feminist, and she's written papers on this. So she thinks she's coming from a very strong point, and she thinks she can actually push Otto and Eli a little bit towards her own thinking. Doesn't work out. But, she's a strong person, just like Iman Martin is. They're all very strong, big, four players with a lot of players sitting underneath, again, with their own characteristics, knitting this storyline together, and they all experience flat tires, hence the title. Now, I really want to come to, because this book is about, the Redeclaration of the United States. It's about, building in humanity and equality. And there's a section here, Fish, in this part, which you head up equality. So let's go to this chapter, and for me, which is chapter 15. Now, I'm not going to give any lead here as to what the reader can expect. I normally give a lead in, but I'm not going to do it. It's not because I couldn't be bothered to work out a more complex question here. Is because I want Fish to do it. And just before he does answer me, I have been in that bar, Cheers, in Boston, and wow, it is so good, everybody. I had to get that bit in. I'm so sorry. Anyway, Fish, chapter 15, equality. Take it away. What is it about? And why is it there?
Within the aspects of the Declaration of Independence, there is a phrase in there that all men are created equal. And the book comes down to, what does that really mean? And it's the aspect that because it has men and doesn't say and women, that there's a potential issue with that. When all men were created equal, there was still at that time slavery in America. So what did that really mean? And I wanted to look to address that however that phrase would get recast in a Redeclaration of Independence, that it is something that is clear and loses any ambiguity about non-inclusiveness. And so it starts from that. The basis for ultimately people to look into a redeclaration was anchored in, I had an awareness that a lot of the Declaration of Independence was written against King George, that people wanted to get away from the monarchy of the UK. So a large portion of the Declaration of Independence was written about what Americans, or early Americans at that time, were against. And so the auspices of establishing a redeclaration was to firmly write in the affirmative what exclusively people are for. And part of then what people are for gets into the equality aspect of making sure that you have something that is unambiguously completely inclusive, regardless of the form we take today or in hundreds of years, how people may be in that time. And so it was just really trying to set a tone or a basis of, for once and for all, trying to get to that people are people and write something with that acknowledgement, recognizing that people can have their own beliefs, their own likes, their own dislikes, but there is this unifying nature, and that hatred should not be something of unification.
I'm also led to believe that the founding forefathers of America who drafted the first declaration, they knew it wasn't perfect and that it needed working on. But it was a good start. Would you agree?
Yes, I think a lot of the language in that allows it to become a living document, because you can add amendments, not to the Declaration, but the Constitution certainly can. So it's the Declaration was one vehicle. The Constitution was then a separate vehicle. That there is, even between the two, there is a degree of organicness within that, and obviously interpretation of language becomes a strong part of that. But it also underlies some of the brittleness about it as well.
Now, do you intend, so I think everybody, we've given you a reasonable insight as to what this book is about. The power of the book, the chessboard with all the players on there, the big four players maneuvering around, and how everybody integrates with each other and knits together and is gelling this storyline about humanity and equality with a new drafted redeclaration, and all with a flat tire. So I want to know now, Fish, is you've written this book, but are you going to continue in this vein? Are you going to write another one? Is there one coming down the line?
I will have another book out shortly that's called Born Posthumous, that is about a loved musician, loosely based on Neil Young, but this beloved musician that is very anti-artificial intelligence, that ends up, after he tragically passes, being reconstituted as an AI, and that AI continues his career writing new material sounding like the original singer, and being able to do that because he's been trained on the material of this artist's life and his songs. So the story is told in a non-linear way. So the future and the past are interweaving with each other. But that book will be out very soon. And I'm also working on another book to follow that one. So hopefully there will be lots more Fish Nealman books to hit the bookshelves soon and over the coming years.
Now, talk about hitting the bookshelves. Where can people get your book from?
If it's anywhere that sells books, if it's not carried physically on their bookshelves in a bookstore, it can be ordered, or you can get it from online sources such as Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, so on.
And your own webpage?
And that will direct you to one of those online sites, yes.
Yes, go to his webpage, everybody. It's fascinating, believe you me. And you'll see all these other books there, not just this one. I have to say, it's been a huge privilege interviewing you, working with you over a couple of weeks about this book of yours, The Flat Tire, entertaining me on my flight to Spain and writing the interview on the way back from Spain. And the gentleman who sat next to me was reading the book, everybody, whilst I was typing up the notes. Well, not tapping the notes, but writing the notes. And it's a thoroughly imaginative, highly creative book, powerful, strong characters, strong storyline. And all I can say is you must read it. I can't be fairer than that. So I just want to say to Fish Nealman, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to chat to you. And I wish you every success with this book. And if I play my cards right, everybody, he might give me some more interviews about his other books. But that's another story.
Thank you, John. It's been wonderful to have this opportunity to converse, and I would love the opportunity to sit down and have another conversation with you in the future.
I'm Jyoti Crowley. Thanks for listening, wherever you're in the world. Until next time, stay safe.